The night I found the little girl in the box, I honestly thought I was just going home from another miserable double shift. I had no idea I was about to pick up a child someone had thrown away like trash. And I definitely didn't know that frozen, silent little girl was the missing daughter of a billionaire who would rip my life open and stitch it back together in ways I still don't fully understand. My name is Amara, and if you've ever felt like the world doesn't really see you unless it needs something from you, you're probably going to recognize pieces of yourself in this story. I was a broke waitress living in a tiny studio that leaked when it rained, working 16-hour days at Rosie's Diner, carrying plates to people who barely looked up to order. My feet hurt all the time, my back was done with me. But rent doesn't care how tired you are. You know what I mean. That February night, the air outside the diner felt like it had teeth. I pushed open the heavy metal back door because it was faster than going out front, and I just wanted to get home, peel off my shoes, and forget the day. The alley behind Rosie's was the same as always. Cracked pavement, a big metal dumpster, the smell of old grease and cigarettes, one lonely streetlight way down at the end, trying its best. I tugged my thin coat tighter and started walking when I heard it. It was this sound. Small. Broken, not quite a cry, not quite a whimper. At first, I thought it was one of the stray cats that lived back there, the ones I sometimes fed with leftover fries. My brain did what tired brains do. It said, ignore it, keep walking, go home. But something in my gut, the part of me my grandma raised to listen, said turn around. Now, I followed the sound toward the dumpster, my sneakers crunching on frozen trash and rock salt. That's when I saw the box. A refrigerator box pushed up tight against the brick wall, like somebody wanted it out of sight. I walked closer, heart thumping in my chest, and looked inside. And everything in me just stopped. There was a little girl curled up in that box. She looked about 5, maybe younger, but her skin had this scary bluish tint from the cold. Not a pretty blue like the sky or a dress. The kind of blue that means the body is giving up. She was wearing a thin dress that might have been pink once, but was now just gray with dirt. No coat, no socks, no shoes. Bare feet pressed against the cardboard. In her arms, she clutched this torn teddy bear, like it was the last piece of the world she trusted. Her hair was matted, tangled her face streaked with grime and dried tears. But it was her eyes that hit me the hardest. Hazel eyes huge in that tiny face, looking up at me with this combination of terror and resignation, like she had already decided that nobody was coming, that this was it for her. 5 years old, and already done hoping. Let me ask you, if you looked down and saw a child like that in a box behind your job, would you have been able to turn away? I dropped to my knees so fast I didn't even feel the cold. Oh my God! Baby, what are you doing out here? I whispered. But she didn't answer. Her teeth were chattering so hard I could hear it over the hum of the alley, this sharp clicking sound that I knew I'd never forget. I shrugged out of my red peacoat, the one my grandmother had given me before she passed, and wrapped it around her. The coat almost swallowed her whole. When I lifted her, it felt like picking up a bundle of sticks. No weight, no resistance. She didn't fight, didn't cry, didn't even flinch. She just kept shaking fingers frozen stiff around that teddy bear. It's okay. I've got you. You're safe now, I said, though my voice was shaking too. I looked around that alley, hoping for some sign of who had left her there, some clue taped to the wall, like in a movie. But there was nothing. Dark windows, empty street. No witnesses. Whoever had put her there was gone. I didn't call 911 right there in the alley. I know some people will say I should have, and maybe they're right. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about procedure. I was thinking if I don't get this child inside somewhere warm right now, she's going to die. So I just started walking. My apartment was 6 blocks away, and that walk felt like miles. I held her tight against my chest, trying to share whatever body heat I had left, my breath coming out in little clouds. She didn't say a word. She just wrapped her arms around my neck and hung on. My building was nothing special. Old brick drafty hallways, doors that stuck when it was cold. I lived on the 3rd floor in a studio I'd painted, a cheerful yellow, to make it feel bigger and brighter than it was. I wrestled the front door open, climbed the stairs with this half-frozen kid in my arms, kicked my apartment door twice to get it to budge like I always had to, and finally stepped into the warm air inside. The place was small. Bed in one corner, tiny kitchen in the other, a thrift store couch, a wobbly little table I used for eating and sewing jobs. But it was mine, and it was warm. I took her straight to the bathroom. The bathtub was old and stained, but the water ran hot, and that's all that mattered. I turned on the tap, let the tub fill slowly, testing the temperature with my elbow, like my grandma taught me when I was a kid. "We need to get you warm, sweetheart," I said softly. "Can you tell me your name?" She just watched me, those big eyes tracking every move, but no sound came out. I worked gently, trying not to show how angry I was at whoever had let her end up like this. I peeled off the filthy dress and lowered her into the water. She sucked in a breath at the heat, stiff at first, then slowly started to relax as the warmth seeped into her skin. I washed her carefully with a soft cloth layer after layer of dirt fading away, talking in a low, steady voice about nothing in particular, just to fill that silence with something that wasn't fear. Under all that grime, she was beautiful. Curly brown hair, when it finally untangled warm brown skin, a few shades lighter than mine, hazel eyes, with little flecks of gold. And behind her left ear, there was this small birthmark, shaped almost like a heart. When she was clean, I wrapped her in my thickest towel and carried her to the bed. I found one of my soft old t-shirts, a green one, slipped it over her head, and it fell past her knees like a dress. In the kitchen, I heated up a can of chicken soup and poured it into a mug so her hands could wrap around it. She drank slowly, spoon by spoon, eyes drifting from the mug to my face and back. Color started to come back into her cheeks, and that dead blue tint faded. "Can you tell me where you live?" I tried again. "Where your mom or dad are?" She just stared at me, her mouth tightening like the words were stuck behind her teeth. "Okay," I said gently. "That's all right. We'll figure it out tomorrow. Tonight you're safe here. No one's going to hurt you." I made a nest of blankets on the couch for myself and tucked her into my bed. She clutched that beat-up teddy bear to her chest like a shield. I stood there for a second, not wanting to just walk away. "What's your bear's name?" I asked. For the first time, her lips moved. The sound that came out was barely more than a breath. "Mr. Buttons," she whispered. I smiled. "Mr. Buttons, huh? That's a good name. Mr. Buttons is going to keep you safe tonight. And so will I." Her eyes were starting to droop when I turned off the light. I lay down on the couch and stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of her breathing, my brain spinning. I knew what I was supposed to do. You find an abandoned child, you call the police. Right away. You don't bring them home, you don't complicate things. You just hand them over to the system and hope. But I kept seeing her in that box, blue and shaking, and so tired. I couldn't stand the idea of strangers waking her up in some cold lobby, asking her questions she wasn't ready to answer, taking her somewhere else unfamiliar on top of everything else she'd already survived. So I told myself something I'd later replay 1,000 times in my head. I'll call them tomorrow. Just let her have one night of warmth and quiet and no questions, just one. Was that the right call? or the wrong one that somehow led to the right place anyway. If it were you, what would you have done in that moment? I didn't know it then. But while I was lying there on my lumpy couch, wondering how I was supposed to handle one little lost girl, a man on the 42nd floor of a glass tower across the city was sitting in a silent conference room, staring at a photo of a baby, asking himself the same question he'd been asking for 5 years. Where is my daughter? I only know this part, because later when everything came crashing together, he told me. He told me how that morning Detective Paula Rodriguez had stood in front of him with another report in her hand, telling him that the lead in Boston was another dead end. How he'd listened numb and counted in his head 417 false alarms since his 6-month-old daughter, Lily Rose Hartwell, had been taken from her nursery. 417 times hope had risen in his chest, only to be crushed. He was the CEO of Hartwell Industries, a name printed on skyscrapers and stock tickers. People called him one of the most eligible bachelors in the country, like that title meant anything when his wife was dead and his baby was gone. He wore suits that cost more than my rent, yet he'd have traded every dollar he had for one real answer. But while he was pressing his fingers to the glass and looking down at a city full of strangers, his daughter was asleep in my green t-shirt holding Mr. Buttons and breathing slow and steady in my bed. The universe is weird like that sometimes. I woke up to the smell of smoke. 1 second I was dreaming about being late to work the next. I was bolt upright on the couch, heart pounding. I ran to the kitchen, and there she was. Tiny bare feet on the cold floor, standing on tiptoe in front of the stove, a pan on the burner smoke, curling up into the air. Hey, Lily, no! I shouted, rushing forward and yanking the pan off the heat. Inside was what might at one time have been an egg. She looked up at me, eyes wide, but not exactly scared, more like she was bracing for whatever punishment she'd been taught to expect. I was hungry, she said. I wanted to make breakfast. That was the first full sentence she'd said to me, and it came with a side of near fire. I knelt down so we were face to face. Okay, I get it. You were hungry. And it was brave to try to make food all by yourself, but the stove is dangerous, all right. If you're hungry, you wake me up. I don't care what time it is. Deal. She nodded solemn like I'd just made her sign a contract. I made her scrambled eggs and toast, the way my grandma used to make them on the rare mornings we both had time, and poured her a glass of orange juice I'd been saving. She cleaned the plate like it was nothing, and sat there, licking a bit of egg off her finger, like she didn't quite trust that there'd be more later. As I watched her, something in me settled. I couldn't pretend this was a weird dream anymore. I had a scared kid in my kitchen who believed she had to cook for herself or go hungry. This was real. That was the moment I knew I needed backup. I wrapped Lily in one of my sweaters that hung to her knees, put socks on her cold feet, and took her down the hall to see Be My Neighbor. If there is one person you want nearby when your life suddenly throws you a curveball, like surprise you have a child, now it's an old nurse who's seen everything and still keeps extra tea and cookies in her cupboard. Bitupu opened the door and took in the scene. Me exhausted and frazzled, and this tiny girl half hiding behind my legs, her fingers gripping the hem of my sweater. Well now, she said, arching one eyebrow. Who is this angel? I told her everything. The alley, the box, the blue skin, the bath, the teddy bear. As I talked, her face shifted. Shock, outrage, sorrow, and then that fierce, steady thing I'd seen when she looked after sick neighbors in our building. Bring her in, she said. Both of you. Come sit. I'll make tea. Bee's apartment was always warm, cluttered with family photos, and little ceramic angels smelling like cinnamon and vanilla. Lily stepped inside, eyes wide, taking everything in. When she saw the angel collection lined up on the windowsill, She whispered, "You have a lot of angels. I've had a lot of years to collect them," B said, chuckling. "You like angels, baby," Lily nodded. "Then you pick one." B told her. "Anyone you want. It's yours." Lily looked at me like she needed permission. I nodded. She moved slowly along the sill, taking her time, and finally chose a small angel with blue wings. She held it carefully with both hands, like it might break if she breathed too hard. B handed me a mug of sweet tea and sat down across from me. "You know you need to call the police," she said, not unkindly, just stating a fact. I stared into my tea, watched the steam twist. "I know," I said. I wanted to make sure she was okay first. I wanted her to have one morning where she wasn't cold and scared before everything gets complicated." "You've got a good heart," B said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "You always have. But this little girl needs more than you can give her alone. Someone out there might be looking for her. And even if they're not, the law needs to know she exists." "What if nobody is looking?" I whispered. "What if the person who left her in that alley is the only family she has? Then the system will figure that out," she said. "But you can't carry this by yourself. You're already working yourself half to death just to pay for that little apartment. How are you going to take care of a 5-year-old too?" I looked over at Lily sitting on the rug, turning the blue angel so it glinted in the light. "I don't know," I admitted. "I just know I can't let strangers take her away before I know she's okay. Not yet." "Then we call," B said, "and we stand beside her while we do." The call to 911 took less than 5 minutes. I gave them my address. Told the dispatcher I'd found an abandoned child, answered a few quick questions. They said an officer would be by within the hour. When I hung up, Lily was watching me. "Are they going to take me away?" she asked. I swear my heart physically hurt hearing that. "They're going to try to find your family, sweetheart," I said. "The people who love you. Nobody loves me," she answered, like she was stating a fact she'd long accepted. Have you ever heard a child say something so wrong that your body just rejects it, like your whole chest tightens up? That's what it felt like. "That's not true," I said, dropping to my knees in front of her. "I've only known you for one night, and I already care about you so much. And Mrs. Thompson gave you one of her angels. She only does that for people she likes. There are people who love you, Lily. You just haven't found all of them yet." She thought about that for a second, then reached out and put her small hand on my cheek. "Will you be my friend?" she asked. "I'll be your friend forever if you want," I told her. The police came. The uniformed officer checked eyes, walked through my apartment, made sure there was no immediate danger. Then the detective arrived. Paula Rodriguez, the same woman who'd been standing in that glass conference room with Victor for years. But I didn't know that yet. She was calm, focused, and surprisingly kind. She listened while I told the story again, writing everything down in this little notebook. Then she got down on one knee so she was eye level with Lily. "Can you tell me your last name, Lily?" she asked. "I don't remember," Lily said. "What about your mommy and daddy? Do you remember their names?" "The man said I don't have a mommy and daddy," Lily said. "He said nobody wants me." "What man?" Paula asked gently. "Can you tell me about him?" "He was mean," Lily answered. "He had a brown coat, and he smelled bad. He put me in the box and told me to be quiet, or the monsters would get me." I felt my stomach flip. Monsters. Like he wasn't the worst one in the story. Paula took photos, including one of the birthmark behind Lily's ear, and promised they'd run her description through every database they had. Check missing children reports, call child services. When I asked what would happen now, she said, normally she'd go into temporary foster care while we investigate. But given the bond she clearly has with you, if you're willing to do a background check, she can stay here for a few days until we know more. "I'll do whatever you need," I said instantly. "You understand this is temporary," she reminded me. A few days, maybe a week. I understand, I told her. I just don't want her scared and alone any more than she already has been. Those few days turned into the beginning of the rest of my life. 3 days passed. 3 days of Lily following me from room to room, panicking if I was out of her sight for more than a few seconds. 3 days of her flinching at loud noises, hiding food under her pillow, like she expected everything to disappear if she wasn't ready. 3 days of nightmares that had her waking up screaming, clutching Mr. Button so tight I thought his little stitched-on eyes would pop off. But there were good things, too. She loved to draw, so I bought cheap crayons and stacks of paper from the dollar store, and she filled them with pictures of houses with big windows, trees with rainbow leaves, and families holding hands. Sometimes she would draw a little girl with curly hair and shrug when I asked if that was her. Maybe she'd say, "I don't remember." On the 4th day, my phone rang. It was Detective Rodriguez. "We found something," she said. "Can you bring Lily down to the station? I'll explain when you get here." You know those moments where time slows down just a little, where your stomach drops, but you don't know if it's good or bad news yet. That's what it felt like. Everything in the room felt sharper, louder. We got dressed in silence and took the bus to the station. They put us in a small room with a couple of chairs and some toys in the corner. It was meant to be kid-friendly, but there was still this buzz in the air like the walls knew too many stories. Paula came in carrying a manila folder. She sat opposite us, took a breath, and said, "I ran Lily's information through our national database. Description age, that birthmark behind her ear. We got a match." She opened the folder and slid a photo across the table. My eyes went straight to the baby in the picture. 6 months old, curly brown hair, hazel eyes, and a tiny heart-shaped birthmark behind her left ear. "This is Lily Rose Hartwell," Paula said. "She was kidnapped from her home 5 years ago. Her father has been searching for her ever since." That was the twist. The moment the story flipped from poor kid abandoned behind a diner to missing billionaire's daughter, found alive. If this were a movie, that would be the scene where the music cuts out and everything goes slow. Hartwell. I repeated the name, sparking a memory of headlines and logos. As in Hartwell Industries, the tech company. "Yes," she said. "Her father is Victor Hartwell. CEO. He's on his way." I looked at Lily, then at the photo, then back at her. The resemblance was undeniable. Do you remember anything from before the man in the brown coat?" I asked Lily softly. "Anything at all? A house, a song, a lady's voice?" She frowned, thinking hard. "I remember a big house," she said slowly, "and a lady who sang to me. She had curly hair like mine, and she smelled like flowers." "That was probably your mom," I said gently. I glanced at Paula, who gave me a small, sad nod. "Your mom is in heaven now, Lily, but your dad is coming. He's been looking for you this whole time." "I have a daddy," she whispered. "Yes, baby," I said. "You do." Her next question stabbed right through me. "Is he nice?" Before I could even attempt an answer, the door opened. He looked exactly like I'd expect a billionaire CEO to look, and nothing like it at the same time. Tall, broad shoulders, expensive suit hair, going gray at the temples, lines on his face that said he hadn't slept properly in years. But his eyes were locked on Lily, like he'd just seen a ghost he'd been begging the universe to send back. He stepped into the room and stopped a few feet away, like he was afraid to get too close and scare her away. "Lily," he said, and his voice broke on her name. "Is it really you?" Lily pressed herself against my side, half hiding behind my arm. "She's scared," I said quietly. "She doesn't remember much. She just needs time." He nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks, not even bothering to wipe them away. After a second, he dropped to his knees, so he was at our level. "I'm your daddy," he said, voice trembling. "I know you don't remember me. I know this is a lot. But I love you so much, Lily. I've loved you every single day since you were born, and I never stopped looking for you. Not once. Lily peeked at him, her eyes going from his face down to his chest. She frowned a little. You have cats on your tie, she said. He glanced down, and this strange little laugh escaped him. Your mom gave me this tie, he said. The tie had tiny cartoon cats on it, totally clashing with the serious suit. She said it made me look less scary. I like cats, Lily said. I had a cat once. He was orange. We can get you a cat, he said immediately. We can get you 10 cats. Anything you want. She thought about that for a second. Can I have a purple cat? If they make purple cats, I'll find one for you, he said. Paula cleared her throat. We'll need to do a DNA test to officially confirm what we already know, she said. But with the birthmark and the matching description, I'm confident this is your daughter, Mr. Hartwell. Do whatever you need, he said, but his eyes were still fixed on Lily. Then he turned to me. You found her, he said. You saved my little girl. I shook my head. I just happened to be there, I said. Anybody would have helped her. No, he said firmly. You didn't just call us and walk away. You took her home. You warmed her up. You fed her. You stayed with her. I want to repay you. Name your price. Anything. A check, a house, whatever you want. Now here's the part where a lot of people get judgmental in the comments, so I'll ask you straight up. What would you have done if a man like that looked you in the eyes and said, name your price? Would you ask for money? A new life? Something big enough to change everything overnight? Would that be wrong? Or just honest? I looked at his card in my hand, at the logo that basically meant unlimited resources. Then at Lily's small fingers, gripping my sleeve. I don't want your money, Mr. Hartwell, I said. I didn't do this for a reward. I just want to know she's going to be okay. He stared at me like he was trying to solve a riddle. In his world, everybody wanted something from him. Everybody had an angle. Let me at least do something, he said, finally. A better apartment, a good job. Whatever you need. What I need is to know that she's safe and loved, I said. That's it. He looked at Lily, then back at me, and I saw understanding dawn in his eyes. She was pressed against my side, not his. She knew me. She trusted me. Then stay, he said quietly. Please. She doesn't know me yet, but she knows you. Will you help me bring my daughter home? Not just to my house, but back to her life. I hesitated. I was a waitress who lived in a studio apartment that leaked. He was a billionaire from another planet. His world was glass towers and private jets. My world was chipped plates and double shifts and dollar store shoes. Then I felt a tiny tug. Please don't leave me, Lily whispered. And in that instant, the decision wasn't about his world or mine. It was about hers. Okay, I said. I'll stay. For now. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Moving into a billionaire's penthouse is exactly as weird as it sounds. 1 minute you're counting crumpled tips in the back of a diner, the next. You're riding in a black car with tinted windows to a building where the lobby alone looks like it costs more per month than your old rent. The elevator whooshed us up to the top, and the doors opened into this huge open space with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture so white I was afraid to breathe on it. Everything was sleek and quiet and expensive, from the art on the walls to the kitchen appliances that probably needed their own instruction manuals. Lily stuck to me like glue. Even in this palace, she wore my old green t-shirt over her new leggings because she said it smelled like my friend. Victor kept a respectful distance, watching her with this mix of joy and heartbreak, trying not to push. How are you two doing? He asked one afternoon, finding us on the massive couch watching cartoons on a TV bigger than my bed. We're okay, I said. She likes the one with the dog that solves mysteries. Is he a good detective? He asked Lily. He's pretty good, she said, eyes still on the screen. He found a missing cat. Maybe I should hire him. Victor said softly. Helen, his assistant, brought us trays with sandwiches and juice boxes. Like it was normal for me to be sitting there in my thrift store jeans, feet tucked under me on a couch that probably cost more than my car would have if I had one. She'd worked for him for over 20 years, and she treated Lily and me with an easy kindness that made it harder to feel like I didn't belong. Victor noticed something before I did. She always looks at you first, he said quietly one day, after Lily checked my face before taking the sandwich Helen offered. Before she eats, before she answers, before she does anything. She trusts me, I said. But it's not because I'm special. I was just the first person who picked her up out of that box. No, he said, shaking his head. It's how you talk to her, how you see her. That's not nothing. That's everything. Weeks passed. Lily started calling him Daddy again, first in whispers at bedtime, then in broad daylight, when she ran through the penthouse to find him. He rearranged his schedule so he could be home for dinner. Hired trauma therapists read books late into the night about attachment and healing. He made mistakes, sure, but he tried. Hard. I found myself becoming something like a translator. I told him what scared her, the dark, sudden, loud noises being left alone for too long. I told him what calmed her, music drawing, knowing exactly what was going to happen next. I suggested he start by just being in the room while I read to her so she could get used to his presence without feeling like he was trying to take over. He listened. I wasn't used to powerful people listening to me, but he did. Every time. At night, after Lily was asleep with her moon-shaped nightlight glowing and Mr. Buttons tucked under her arm, Victor and I would end up in front of the fireplace with mugs of tea or coffee, just talking. He told me about Grace, how she used to make fun of his serious business ties and buy him ones with cats or cartoon characters, because she said he needed to remember he was a person, not a walking company. How her laugh could fill a room. How she'd gone every week to a support group for parents of missing children, even when he told her it was pointless. The last conversation we had was an argument about that meeting. He said one night, staring into the flames, I told her talking about it wasn't going to bring Lily back, that we needed to focus on the investigation, not feelings. Then she died on her way home from that group. I never got to apologize. You can't change that. I said, my voice soft. You can't go back and fix those words, but you can decide who you're going to be now. For Lily. For Grace's memory. That's still in your hands. He looked at me like I'd just handed him a rope in a storm. I'm trying, he said. I don't know if it's enough. Trying is more than most people do, I said. She'll see it. Just give her time. Somewhere in all those nights by the fire, something between us shifted. It wasn't dramatic. There was no slow-motion moment with swelling music. It was little things. His hand brushing mine when we both reached for a book, the way our eyes found each other across a room full of people, how he seemed more relaxed when I was there. I fought it. Hard. I told myself he was just grateful, just lonely, that I was projecting feelings I had no business having. I told myself I didn't fit in his world, that a billionaire and a waitress don't get a happily ever after outside of cheesy movies. Then one night, he sat across from me at that ridiculously long dining table, and everything came out. I want to thank you, he said, for what you've done for Lily, for what you've done for me. You've changed our lives, Amara. You've thanked me plenty, I said, trying to laugh it off. I haven't thanked you properly, he said. You came into a nightmare you had no obligation to walk into, and you stayed. You didn't just save my daughter's life. You saved mine, too. He reached across the table and took my hand. This time, the air between us felt different. Charged. Honest. I know this is complicated, he said. I know you came into this for Lily, not for me. But I can't pretend you're just an employee or just a friend. You've become everything. I'm falling in love with you. I think I started falling the first time I saw you holding my daughter, like she was the most precious thing in the world." He took a breath. "If you don't feel the same way, I'll never bring it up again. I'll keep my distance. I'll respect whatever you need." I just couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel it. I sat there, my brain firing in 1,000 directions. The gap between us in money, in status, in life experience. The looks people would give. The comments people would write online. The fear of losing not just him, but Lily too if this ended badly. And then there was the way my heart leapt every time he walked into the room. The way my day felt wrong. If we didn't talk, the way I'd started catching myself thinking in terms of we instead of him. And them. "I'm falling for you too," I said finally. "I have been for a while. I just kept trying to talk myself out of it." He smiled, then really smiled for the first time since I'd known him. It was like watching the sun come through after weeks of gray. He came around the table, pulled me to my feet, and hugged me like he was afraid I'd vanish. Then he kissed me. It was soft, careful, like he understood exactly how much I'd had to fight myself to say yes. And just like that, I wasn't just the waitress who found his daughter. I was the woman he loved. Now before you roll your eyes and say, "Oh, of course poor girl marries the billionaire," I want you to remember something. There was still a man out there who had stolen a baby and kept her hidden for 5 years. The story wasn't over. It just turned a corner. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Detective Rodriguez called again. Victor put the phone on speaker so I could hear. "We've made an arrest," she said. "We know who took Lily." His back straightened. "Who is he?" he asked. "His name is Gerald Simmons," she said. "He used to work in your IT department. Low level. Fired about 6 years ago for serious misconduct. He blamed you for the firing, said you ruined his life, so he took my daughter to get back at me," Victor said, voice flat as stone. "That's what it looks like," she said. "He planned it for months. Studied your security, waited for a shift change, created a distraction. Walked into the nursery and walked out with your baby in less than 10 minutes. At first, he intended to demand ransom, but the investigation got too big, too fast. He panicked. Instead of making contact, he kept her hidden, moving her from place to place with the help of a few accomplices. Eventually, money ran out, his accomplices backed out. He abandoned her. Behind a diner, I said, my hand tightening on the back of Victor's chair. In February, in a cardboard box. He claims he left her somewhere she'd be found, Paula said. He says he never meant for her to get hurt. But he's facing charges for kidnapping, child endangerment conspiracy. He's not walking away from this. I want to see him, Victor said quietly. I don't think that's a good idea, she said. I don't care, he replied. I need to look at the man who took my daughter and ask him why. I need to make sense of this. After he hung up, he just sat there, staring at nothing. His hands were clenched into fists on his desk. I walked around, took them in mine. This wasn't your fault, I said. Isn't it though? He asked. I built a company where people are numbers on a spreadsheet. I fired a guy and never thought about what happened to him after. He blamed me. Maybe I did ruin his life. Even if you fired him unfairly, even if your company is cold and harsh. I said nothing. You did justifies what he did. Nothing justifies stealing a baby from her crib, hiding her for 5 years, dumping her in an alley, and telling her nobody wants her. That's on him, not on you. Do you think that's fair? Or do you think when a system chews people up, it shares some responsibility for what they become? It's not a simple question, I know. It still keeps me up some nights. We never got all the details of what Lily went through in those missing years. Odd memories came out in therapy. A small, dark room, a woman who sometimes brought food. A man with a bad smell and a heavy hand being told over and over that she didn't have a mommy or daddy anymore. Some things she never voiced. I'm not sure I want to know. What I do know is this: she survived. And she didn't just survive, she built a new life. We had our wedding in the garden of Victor's childhood home. It was June. The roses were in full bloom. White chairs lined up on the lawn like something out of a magazine. But the guest list was small. Family. Close friends. The staff who'd become part of our lives. Detective Rodriguez sat next to B in the front row, both of them tearing up before the music even started. I wore a simple white dress. Nothing too fancy. Just me turned up a notch. My hair was done in curls with tiny flowers pinned in. Lily wore a bright blue dress that swished when she walked the same shade as my old coat, and took her job as flower girl very seriously. She walked between us down the aisle, scattering petals, her face lit up with this joy I still see when I close my eyes. Victor's vows weren't polished. They were raw. He talked about the darkness he'd lived in, the anger, the guilt the nights he'd wanted to give up. He talked about how finding Lily and meeting me had given him a reason to try again. He promised to use his money and power for more than just building bigger things, promised to be present, to listen, to love us, with the same intensity he'd once only given to his work. I told him the truth, that I'd spent most of my life believing I had to handle everything alone, that people like him weren't meant for people like me. That love was something other people got. I promised to love him and Lily for the rest of my days, to be their home. No matter where we lived, to never forget where I came from, or who I was before all the money and the titles. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Lily squeezed in between us and put her arms around both our waists. "We did it," she said. "We're a real family now." 6 months later, we went back to Rosie's diner. The cracked vinyl seats were still cracked. The smell of coffee and bacon grease was still burned into the walls. The neon sign in the window still flickered. It was like walking into a memory, except this time I wasn't wearing my faded uniform. I was sitting in a booth with my husband and our daughter. "This is where you used to work?" Lily asked, looking around. "This is where I was working the night I found you," I said. I pointed toward the back wall. "Right outside that door behind the dumpster." Our waitress that night was a young woman named Patricia. She did a double take when she realized who I was. "Oh my God," she said. "You're Amara, right? I heard the story. You really married a billionaire and rescued his daughter behind our dumpster. It wasn't as dramatic as the news made it sound," I said, smiling. But in some ways, it kind of was. After she left with our order, Lily tugged on Victor's sleeve. "Daddy, can we come here every year?" she asked. "To remember. This is where our family started." He looked at me and something unspoken passed between us. "Yeah," he said. "I think we should. This can be our place." I sat there looking at the man I loved and the little girl who had changed everything. And I thought about all the tiny choices that led us there. Taking the back exit instead of the front. Listening to a strange sound in the alley instead of pretending I didn't hear it. Deciding to bring a freezing child home instead of waiting on hold with some system that might not have gotten there in time. Saying yes when my fear told me to say no. People like to call me lucky. Lucky I was in the right place at the right time. Lucky it was a billionaire's daughter, and not just some anonymous kid the world would forget. Lucky I got a happy ending. I don't know if I'd call it luck. What I know is that a little girl was left to die in a cardboard box, and instead of keeping my head down and walking past, I opened it. I picked her up. I stayed. So let me ask you, if it were you walking out behind your job, after a long, awful shift, tired cold broke, and you heard that tiny sound from the shadows, What would you have done? Would you have gone toward it, or pretended you didn't hear it? If you found out the child you saved belonged to a man with more money than you could imagine, what would you ask for? Do you think there's anything wrong with asking for something in return? Or is the only right answer the one I picked? And what about the man who took Lily? Gerald. Is decades in prison enough for what he did? Do you think our system should do more for men like him before they break? Or do you think there are some choices that are just evil, no matter how hurt you feel? For us, for the Hartwell family, Lily's declaration at that diner table has become our promise to each other. She put her small hand over both of ours, looked at us, with those hazel eyes that have seen too much and still sparkle, and said, "No more sad stories. From now on, only happy endings." I know the world doesn't always work that way. There are still kids out there right now sleeping in cars under bridges and alleys. There are still parents who never get their child back. There are still Geralds out there, angry and desperate, and about to make unforgivable decisions. But I also know this. Every time we choose to look, to listen, to step in, instead of stepping around, we tilt things a little closer to the kind of ending we all say we want. So if you're still here with me, I want to hear what you think. Was I wrong to keep Lily that first night before calling the police, or would you have done the same thing? Do you think Victor bears any responsibility for what Gerald became, or is that solely on Gerald? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to decide whether to get involved or walk away? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Argue with me. Agree with me. Tell me your own stories about times you stepped in, or times you wish you had. If this story hit you in the heart, even a little, go ahead and like the video, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that ordinary people can change lives just by refusing to ignore the cardboard boxes the world leaves in dark corners. Because at the end of the day, rich or poor, all any of us can do is this: when life puts a choice in front of you and whispers, "Are you going to open it?" I hope your answer is yes.